Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And we'd rather let our deep fat fryer feature fall by the wayside. I haven't even told you the recipe that I think I would use to convince Mary Berry that she was wrong to condemn all deep fat fryers, or indeed chip pans, which fulfil the same purpose. We must remember to get that back on the board. But I want to turn your attention next to meals of an altogether different kind. 6 cases of animal cruelty are reported daily by inspectors inside UK slaughterhouses. It's an astonishing figure. I hesitate to give you details, but I feel that I probably have to. Very, very rarely does any human being ever get prosecuted for stuff like this, and yet we routinely describe ourselves as a nation of animal lovers. Try and knit those two positions together today. Julie in Suffolk makes a very early and I think very powerful point. She suggests that many people imagine farms to be homely storybook-style farmyards with content animals wandering freely in a countryside idyll. The reality of factory farms and slaughterhouses is horrifically different. These places need to be opened up for meat eaters to understand the reality. I suppose having indulged in a little bit of bespoke opinion therapy in the last hour, I should try and do things the other way around in this hour. But there is, I bet you nod when I say this. If you eat meat, okay, you're not a vegetarian. I bet you nod when I say this. You'd rather not know. I'd rather not know. I don't want to be put off my steak or my burgers or my chicken drumsticks or my lamb mince, my chili con. I don't want to be put off it by knowing what goes on inside the slaughterhouses. Now that makes me pathetic. And here's another weird thing that you will either nod with or not nod with, depending on your own situation. I think my opinion's changed since I got a dog. It didn't change when we had cats. Still do have cats, and I don't know why. I'm more upset by this story now than I would have been 2 years ago. I don't know why that is. Why would a dog have made me more sensitive to animal cruelty issues than cats did? I don't know, but there we are. 0345 6060 973. Now, if we were having a debate about halal or kosher methods of slaughter, everyone cares passionately, all of a sudden, about the mode of dispatch for killing animals that we're going to eat. And yet, I don't really believe them. I got to be honest with you. 95%. I think I always think back to that UKIP spokesman who admitted to a Jewish voter, that it was collateral damage, I think was the phrase he used. No, our policy on ritual slaughter is really pretty much designed just to make life more difficult for Muslims. We're really sorry that it's also going to have to apply to Jews. Otherwise, we'll never be able to get it through as a policy. That, to me, is the red herring in this debate, because most people who scream blue murder about halal don't really know what they're talking about, and don't scream blue murder when they learn that there were 4,000 breaches of regulation involving avoidable pain, distress or suffering over the past 2 years. Where are the marches, the protests, the objections to that? I don't know. So here's the thing. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And I just want to do some philosophy this. There's just some thinking on this. I don't want to say is it good or is it bad. No one's comfortable with the notion of cruelty being endemic in British slaughterhouses. Nobody welcomes it. If you do, you're just weird. Some of the stories about what human beings do to these animals are absolutely shaming. A cow being violently slammed against a wall following an argument between 2 workers. One abattoir worker beating 3 bulls with a stick and a prod. A haulier hitting and kicking cattle while unloading them. Sheep being grabbed by the wool in the ears or dragged by the horns. Pigs being lifted by their ears and their tails into trucks. A lot of these problems are during transport rather than actual slaughter, but the figures are conflated, they're elided, they're put together to create this troubling statistic of 4,000 breaches of regulation over 2 years. Last week, a slaughterman was jailed for 10 months over cruelty offences. He was caught kicking and hitting pigs and sheep after undercover filming by a welfare group, and this was at an abattoir attached to a family butcher's in Staffordshire called S. Bagshaw and Sons. The British Meat Processors Association reiterates that point I just made. About 83% of the reports relating to transport rather than the slaughter process. But the fact that every single time a camera guru or an undercover activist manages to get into one of these places, they seem to find evidence of it every single time. Why? So, here's the thing, okay? You think you're an animal lover, but you eat meat, and you look the other way when stories like this unfold. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. I just want to try to work out why. With me, I think it is willful ignorance. I mean, Mrs. O'Brien, we went through a phase of buying organic and stuff like that, but don't really see the point anymore. But Mrs. O'Brien is very big on animal welfare, so we generally only buy meat, chicken, for example, that has various badges on it to prove that it's been properly looked after. I don't think I'd be breaking any marital confidences by saying when I'm in charge of shopping, I'm a lot less conscientious than she is, especially when I'm shopping for the kids. I don't go through the hoops that she goes through to ensure that we're buying stuff that is certified in some way. But I probably should be. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I think the reason why I don't is because I don't want to think about it. I really like eating meat, okay? That doesn't make me a bad person. But I really don't want to know about how much that animal might have suffered to provide me with dinner. That probably does make me a bad person. It's about willful blindness, isn't it? It's about closing your eyes. Is that why? Do you think that's simple, or have you got another explanation? Why does this apparent nation of animal lovers not respond or not take more action on the widespread issue of cruelty in abattoirs? And I think we'll get the Ray Liotta moment ready for anyone who's actually worked in a slaughterhouse or an abattoir to give me a ring now and just tell me whether or not it's fair to suggest that every time they get someone undercover with a camera in these places, they come away with evidence of absolutely grim and gross behaviour. Changing the law would see all abattoirs install CCTV, and independent vets would have unrestricted access. So you could sort of turn up on spec and check out the practices in a slaughterhouse. The BVA don't like it. The BVA do like it. The British Veterinary Association say we need to foster a culture of compassion in slaughterhouses, coupled with robust and effective enforcement, so that the animals we farm for food have both a good life and a humane death. I completely agree with him, but oddly not enough to march, or to, I don't know. It's odd. So you tell me. 0345 6060973. Why this nation of animal lovers is apparently so unmoved by repeated and widespread evidence of animal cruelty. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Very briefly, I met an 8-year-old. I had to sit next to an 8-year-old girl at dinner on Friday who was a vegetarian. And the nice thing about vegetarian children as opposed to vegetarian adults is that they're not on a mission. I know a lot of adults aren't either, but quite often you feel there's a little bit of kind of holier than thou behaviour going on with adults. If you're a vegetarian, that's fine, but there's no real reason why I should know that you're a vegetarian unless you're coming around to my house for dinner. If you're not coming around to my house for dinner, I don't need to know that you're a vegetarian. You don't need to tell me when we're ordering. You don't need to. Do you see what I mean? You're a vegetarian, that's fine. I don't sit down in a restaurant with you and say, oh, by the way, just so you know, I eat meat, yeah? Why would I do that? I just get the menu, I look at it, I find something I like, I order it. You sit down opposite me, you say, oh, by the way, I'm a vegetarian. Do we know if it's got any good vegetarian? I'll just have a mushroom and shut up. Seriously. So an 8-year-old vegetarian doesn't do any of that. They just say, why are you a vegetarian? And our host had prepared her a separate dish from what everybody else was having, but it was no big fuss or rumpus. And she just said, I really like animals. And I just, when I was about 6, I decided I didn't want to eat one anymore. And I thought, oh, from the mouths of babes, eh? There is no more powerful argument than that. I really love animals and I don't want to eat one anymore. Do you know who said that vegetarianism would I have to get you the quote right, but Albert Einstein. Okay, stand by for the least profound thing you're going to hear from me all week. Albert Einstein once said something really interesting about vegetarianism, but I can't remember what it was. I saw it up on a wall at that wind turbine I went up last week. I told I'll find out what the quote is while Alex in Acton entertains us. Alex, why do you think there's this... It's almost a contradiction at the heart of our society. We worship animals. We consistently congratulate ourselves on how kind and compassionate we are to them. We give more money to the donkey sanctuaries of Britain than we do to the charities actually working with human beings. And yet we don't respond ever to these repeated tales of epic cruelty unfolding daily in our slaughterhouses.
It's a strange one, and I kind of come from kind of both sides of things, really. I think part of it, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said that most of us just don't want to know. Yes. So I had no choice. I grew up in a family of butchers, a family-run butchers that were involved with slaughterhouses and basically every process that most meat and dairy and eggs would go through. So I kind of saw it all. It was the norm to me. I never really felt comfortable eating meat because I thought of myself as an animal lover, but it was, particularly in our family, it was it's probably the worst thing you could do was go vegetarian or vegan, as I have now.
You're no son of mine. You shake the dust from your shoes as you make your way up the garden path.
Honestly, you've no idea. I could have told them I'd made any other life choice than possible, but this is probably
not vegetarian. Veganism, you've gone full. You've gone all in.
I felt, but that only because I felt when I actually decided not to be blissfully unaware and do research into, other than the fact of things not being just a nice pretty farm and slaughterhouses being actually pretty horrific, but actually the side of things that go into cheese, the thing that goes into eggs. And I thought, if I stay as a vegetarian, I'm just as big a hypocrite, because I still think that's horrific, and I'm not doing anything about it. And I understand why people don't make that decision. You know, my wife is not a vegan, but you know, she's stuck to her guns about it, and that's fine. But it's difficult for people to be both sides. I think if we call ourselves an animal lover, if you are aware of the type of things that happen in these places, which, by the way, the stuff that gets reported is only half of it. It really is
tip of the iceberg.
It's horrific. It's awful.
How do your family rationalise it then? I mean, because obviously going vegan is going, I keep saying all in, but I think you understand what I mean by that. But when you argue with your relatives, and so, but how can you be comfortable with behaviour like this, and this? How do they rationalise it?
They don't. It's true. It's one of those things, and as you said earlier about, you know, with adult vegetarians and vegans, it's almost that holier than thou type attitude. What I would say to that, and this is where the arguments come in with family, because most of them have gone, oh really? And after the initial why, and you go through it, and they can't really rationalise it, but just say, oh look, it's the family thing, you know, look, we've been butchers and meat eaters for years. If you've ever tried and go into a restaurant, or you're going out with friends for any type of dinner, and you have to ask the waitress about a particular meal as to whether it's got dairy in it or whatever, there's not a time that goes by when someone goes, why are you asking them that? And then you say, oh well, it's just because I don't eat meat, or I don't eat dairy. And then they say, why? And I know just vegans have this kind of reputation for, how do you know someone's a vegan? Because they'll tell you straight away.
You have to. I was talking more about vegetarians. I understand ordering as a vegan must be very difficult, because stuff sneaks in.
And you try and explain as to why, and by trying to explain why takes about 20-30 minutes. So now I just say, I don't eat meat or dairy. It doesn't particularly agree with me if I can't really be bothered to get into it. But I think the crux of the argument is why we don't really seem to care more is because it would mean us having to give something up. And I think naturally that's
this is awful. So in the last hour when we were talking about tattoos, I sounded a bit like a racist. And now that we're talking about slaughterhouses, I'm going to sound a bit like a climate change denier. I'm just going to say, look, it might well, all right, just don't forget about the facts. I don't want to be told what to do. I like meat too much. I'm going to carry on doing what I do. I don't care what damage it might be doing to the planet.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say about the halal side of things.
It's only Tuesday as well. It's going to be some week. Go on, I was going to outlaw all mention of halal, because it just turns everything into such a screaming bun fight.
And it does, because I can have, where I've had friends gone out to dinner with Muslim friends, and the discussion has got onto halal meat, suddenly those people that would look at me or argue with me about veganism are still very, very
suddenly they care about animals.
Honestly, it's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous or racist. Hey, call it what you will. And the family, are they now? What's the word I'm looking for? Are they consoled? Are they reconciled with your veganism?
It's kind of like a joke now. I think they find it quite funny. And do you know what, honestly, my mother unfortunately has not been too well recently, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
I've tried to bring in a few more veganism side of things, as the doctor said that plant-based stuff would help her more of the particular condition
Proteins.
From eating red meat, for example.
Absolutely.
And it's done her the world of good, and I think she quite enjoys it now. So I'm going to.
Well, that's nice. Softly catchy monkey, or not monkey. Tofu. Can I ask you a very personal question? I'm already late for the travel news, and you don't have to answer it. Will you accept an inheritance from your family of butchers?
No, not from that industry. I genuinely will not. No.
Wow, you're amazing, and again, you make the rest of us feel a little bit small, which is why I'm going to do what climate change deniers do and just pretend I didn't hear any of that. I love meat.
James O'Brien on LBC.
22 minutes after 12. Crackling start to this subject, writes Lino. Very good. 03456060973 is a number you need. If you can just help us make some sense of the juxtaposition of stories, if you will. The status this country awards itself as a nation of animal lovers. And we are. I think we do have a lot of compassion towards animals. And yet, 6 cases of cruelty reported daily by inspectors in UK slaughterhouses. More than 4,000 breaches of regulations involving avoidable pain, distress or suffering. Is it just a sort of form of willful hypocrisy? It's deliberate and knowing hypocrisy to say, yeah, all right, okay, don't show me more pictures of sheep being abused. I just like lamb chops too much. It just is, isn't it? I'm trying to find something that will just restore a little bit of moral credibility. There isn't anything. I like meat. I don't like thinking about the animal suffering to provide me with my dinner. Therefore, I won't think about the animal suffering, and I'll thank you not to tell me about it. It's just a sort of slightly younger version of climate change denial. Just saying, I don't want to be told what to do by you, so I'm going to sort of ignore science because I want to carry on driving my car or just doing what I want to do, really, and get lost, all of you, with your information and your facts. I'm doing the same with meat, I think. Found the thank you, Steve, for the Einstein quote I mentioned earlier. Here it is. I kid you not. Einstein's not infallible, but he's cleverer than most of us. Nothing will benefit human health and increase the chances for survival of life on Earth as much as the evolution to a vegetarian diet. So you've got species survival as a reason to change your habits. Why just genuinely, and talk about yourself, actually. Why, am I describing you when I say, you like meat too much to tune in to the stories telling you how awful it is? It's why the halal angle is such a red herring, because you never, ever, ever hear objections on the scale of actual, genuine and deliberate cruelty to the ones that you do on ritual slaughter from certain corners of our community. 24 minutes after 12 is the time. Rory is in Horsham. Rory, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
It's something this is really close to my heart, and thanks for bringing it up. I think perhaps there is some degree of what you said about people just not wanting to know, but I also think it's that people don't know what to do. So there are charities out there that are fighting really hard against this sort of stuff, so against factory farming, about live transport of animals. And I was just encouraged people to go online to look at that stuff, and you can actually, very interesting. Recently I had a leaflet put through my door where it actually told me how much the different supermarkets care about animal welfare. And I'm not going to name any names, but you'd be surprised.
I'm quite up on, oddly,
up and low, yeah.
my wife is quite up on all this, so I am aware of what you speak, but it's A, quite niche, and B, it does involve a premium, so it does then fall into that category of things that become described in negative terms as middle class, doesn't it? It becomes, I can't afford to be working out where every chicken comes from. I can't afford to be doing, and I worry that there's some mileage in that position. I have some sympathy for
definitely. Yes, it's definitely, it costs money to be more conscientious, definitely, yeah. But I'd say my personal thing, so I'm a meat eater, but I do, one thing I really take an issue with is duck farming, because I read somewhere that they did a report on, what the conditions that ducks should be kept in, and they have to be near water, obviously they're water animals, and apparently a few years ago there wasn't one duck farming site in the whole of UK that met these sort of standards. So to me, that's the one meat I do tend to avoid, because I think that is appalling, really. But
yeah, well, it is. It's deeply worrying. You're right, of course. If you're just going to growing them for food, that kind of sums it up, doesn't it? It's not growing them for food. If you're raising them for food, then why would you care about whether or not they can go for a little paddle or not?
Yeah, exactly. But I think
but that's Chinese food now. That's crispy duck off the blick. Oh,
indeed.
Mate, what are you going to do? What do you have when you go to the Chinese then? If you don't have crispy duck,
that's a difficult one, isn't it?
It is. It's
definitely a favourite, isn't it?
But more than a favourite, it's a reason to go down that road. You sound like an addict, James, says Tab. Addicted to pain, murder, and eating corpses. Yep, that's me. Addicted to pain, murder, and eating corpses. Can we get that on a T-shirt, please? 12:26 is the time. Some great contributions coming in via text and tweet. I've got a couple of phone lines free. I'll remind you of the number in a moment. Dairy and meat farming, I'm told, are the leading causes of water waste, deforestation, animal waste, and climate change. So when I say, yeah, but I don't care, I do, in a way, join forces with the science deniers. Jay is in Wembley. Jay, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi there, James.
Hello.
A long-time listener.
Welcome.
Since the day I was born, I've been a vegetarian, and people often ask me, why are you a vegetarian? And they just always ask me that, and I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm missing if I haven't tried it. So that's that question answered. And also, like, I just find it funny that people eat meat and then...
Oh dear, I think the phone line went down there. That's 3 today. I do apologise. And not, as I say repeatedly, there's not a lot we can do about it. It's 12:28. Suki, I'll come to you first after the news. I don't want to squeeze you into the 60 seconds or so remaining. The number you need if you want to follow Suki is 0345 6060973. I want you to talk about yourself as well, because this isn't good enough. I'd love to be vegetarian, James, but if I eat a salad for dinner, I'm hungry again in 45 minutes, so it's meat for me. I'm not going to tease you for presuming that vegetarianism involves eating an exclusive diet of salad, but you are being a bit silly. You can have a big bowl of carbohydrates, you can have a big bowl of pasta, you can have beans on toast. You don't have to have or you can have a lasagna that just doesn't have meat in it. You can cook all sorts of things. A moussaka that just doesn't have the lamb mince. You go in heavier on the aubergines. I'm sounding like a sort of pound shop Jamie Oliver, but there's a lot you can do on the diet front that doesn't involve... Okay, I'll put this out there now. Do you think we've been brainwashed? Do you think actually... I know we sometimes on this programme end up blaming, quotes, big business, end quotes, for everything in the way that others blame immigration for everything. But in terms of how society works, it's increasingly structured just to see more and more money flowing from the bottom to the top, more and more money going down the interests of investors. And farming is big business. Meat production is massive business. Just look at the horse meat scandal to understand how far people will go in pursuit of a little bit more, just a tiny bit more profit. And I sit here on the radio congratulating myself on being all the blooming enlightened and liberal. I'm doing the work. I'm shilling for whatever the big farmer equivalent of big farming is. Big farming. I'm shilling for them. I say, oh yeah, you got to eat meat though. Yeah, you got to. Why? Is it actually time for a root and branch revision of our national position on this? And if it's not going to come about as a result of discovering just how grim things can be in these abattoirs, what the hell is going to do it? We're not a nation of animal lovers. We're a nation of animal killers. Just because you treat your puppy better than you treat your children doesn't mean you're an animal lover. It means you're a human hater. We're not animal lovers at all. So why has my position on this changed since I became a dog owner? Plenty of food for thought there. So Mary Berry, very unhappy about deep fat fryers. I'm not fully across the story. Someone's just told me that the main objection, someone's just tweeted me that the main objection was that they're a fire risk, but she added that they are detrimental to health as well. So I'm not arguing with the fire risk factor. Always treat your deep fat fryer with respect. But I like deep fat fryers. I've gone for an active fryer myself, which allows you just to use a tablespoon of oil to cook a kilo of chips. But there are some dishes you can only do in a chip pan or a deep fat fryer. And given that we're talking about vegetarianism and meat this hour, I'll give you a quick heads up on what I do. You know when you get a courgette? So easy to grow in your own garden. See, this is going to sound like, again, that we're returning to that subject of why middle class has become an insult. It's going to make me sound like some sort of middle class cliche. You can grow courgettes for buttons in your own back garden. Seriously, why would you not do that? And they flower. They have a beautiful yellow flower on them, courgettes, which is edible. So what you do, and I know you've probably had this yourself, but not everybody will have done, so bear with. You get some, I prefer a gorgonzola picante, but you can use any cheese. You go for something a bit blander if you want, like a ricotta. You get some cheese and you stuff the flour of the courgette flour with the cheese. And sticky cheese is best, so you get it all stuck around the edges. Then you just dip it in a light batter, like a tempura batter, chuck it in a deep fat fryer. Deep fried courgettes and courgette. I mean, mate, it will blow your socks off. It's absolutely delicious, and you can do it in a shallow fryer, but it's never as good. So if you want, in the remaining 25 minutes of the programme, what would you serve Mary Berry to show her why deep fat fryers do have a place in the modern genteel kitchen? I'll take almost all comers on that, but it has to be something a bit fancy pants. You can't ring in with spam fritters. 0345 6060973, which you can also shallow fry. Suki is in Richmond to steer us back towards why we claim to be a nation of animal lovers while simultaneously doing naffle about cruelty in abattoirs. Suki, what have you got?
I don't know what to say, James. You've completely blown me away today because you've hit the nail on the head. I've never come across... in my life, I've been vegetarian since I was 14. I'm 47 now. Anyone who's an omnivore has actually said out loud that, yeah, actually, maybe it's because we don't care enough. But I like meat.
I'm a chuntering hypocrite. There's no two, because otherwise you couldn't.
No, but it's okay. It's okay, and I like to be very non-judgmental about these things. Unfortunately, it's actually the carnivals that got a problem with me that tell me that I'm wrong.
Yeah. There's a passive aggressiveness, isn't there, to this that I've been guilty of in the past, and oddly, that's why I mentioned dinner on Friday, because I was sitting next to an 8-year-old. And if I'd been sitting next to a 38-year-old, I'd have gone down my usual banter route about, well, you know, no one provided a meat option at a vegetarian wedding. Why did I have to provide a vegetarian option at my wedding? No, I'm so funny, I'm so clever. No. But with an 8-year-old girl, you can't really do that. You have to sort of go, oh, yeah, good point.
Indeed. And, you know, it's usually the omnivores or the carnivores usually take the position that, well, you have to eat meat. We're designed to eat meat, and all of those other things that kind of don't really make sense. No. And we don't have to eat meat. I mean, I'm living proof of that. I'm fairly fit. I look okay for my age. You know, I've not fallen apart. I've still got everything. You know.
That's it. All your major limbs intact.
Yeah, and you know, I haven't died of starvation. And you know, you get the usual questions like, well, where do you get your protein from? I mean, and this kind of demonstrates how little I think the general public know about nutrition, because if they'd asked me something sensible like, where do I get my B12 from, then that would be a valid question. You know, you can survive very, very happily on a vegetarian diet, and you know, I have done.
So we're not animal lovers then? We're just liars. We think we're animal lovers, but we're not at all. We're not animal lovers at all.
I always like to use the of trying to explain this to an alien. Right? Yes. When aliens come down to...
Or a Frenchman.
And you said, right, okay, well, these are the animals that we eat, and these are the ones that we don't. And this is strange. This animal's a part of your family. And the other one, which is even more intelligent, for a pig, for instance, than a cat, it's on the dinner plate.
And we have outrage among meat eaters in this country about other countries daring to eat meat from animals that we don't think they should eat, while we're tucking into animals that they wouldn't touch.
Indeed, and I think the important, message that I always try and get across is, you know, I don't take a holier-than-thou attitude. People are free to make their own choices, but I do believe that it's social conditioning and the idea that, you know, you can distance yourself away from the process and buy your meat from, I don't know, Waitrose other supermarkets are available. Waitrose in a shrink-wrapped thing where it's ready boned. It's just something that we've been conditioned to.
Do you ever wobble? I mean, the famous one is the smell of bacon and things like that. I don't want to indulge in cliche, but I can see some sense in that.
No, I
never wobble.
I've never actually liked meat, even as a child.
No, you don't count then. You're not a proper vegetarian. You're not doing it out of principle. You're doing it out of preference.
Well,
I don't like vegetables.
Not entirely. It was a conscious decision because I didn't. You know, I personally don't believe it's right, but I don't think that vegetarians should ever take the holier-than-thou attitude.
Well, and again, it's not been a very enjoyable show for me, this. I made a complete prune of myself in the last hour, and I didn't really learn much in the first hour. And in this hour, it seems to be almost irrefutable that meat-eating Brits who claim to be animal lovers while boasting about how cute their little dog is are just complete hypocrites. So it's a good job Suki's not judgmental. And I was about to do that thing where I said, well, that makes a pleasant change, a vegetarian who's not judgmental. But it's just me buying into it. This is what climate change deniers sound like to scientists. So here are loads and loads of facts. Look, here's loads and loads of animals getting treated appallingly every single day. You still eat meat. And even though there are plenty of slaughterhouses that one presumes are run brilliantly and rightly, you don't check. You've got no way of knowing where your rissole came from, have you? Battered Ferrero Rocher, apparently. Battered Ferrero Rocher. You need a deep fat fryer for that. That sounds... 12:40 is the time. Jim is in Bromley. Jim, what made you pick up the phone?
Oh, hello, James. First time caller to you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I used to work in an abattoir some years ago. This was in the 70s.
Yes.
I'll say I worked in the abattoir. I was connected with the abattoir because I had to distribute the meat to butchers and things. You know?
Right. Yes.
But I did watch how animals were euthanized, and it was a very, very well run organisation. You know, it was very clean, and the slaughtermen, of course, were properly qualified. And that place would undergo any scrutiny at any time. It was just well done, and it was very, very quick, and I think a very clean way of euthanizing animals. The only thing I suppose I had any real concerns about was what they did with pigs, but that's by the by.
Well, hang on, you can't leave that hanging. What did they do with pigs?
Well, where the cattle and sheep are actually shot with a bolt.
Yes.
Pigs are electrocuted.
Right.
They were at that time. That might be different today, but at that time they were put into a pen and electrodes attached to them.
You see. As soon as you say that, I start wincing, and yet I can eat bacon without so much as a backwards glance. It's about the distance, isn't it?
I am a meat eater, not every day, but
no.
I do enjoy the old bit of beef, etc. However, I think the way the slaughtermen look at it is it's what they're dealing with is a harvest in the same way the farmer would be reaping a field. That's how they view the animals. They have no relationship. They just come in from the markets into the pen, straight in and out the other side, ready to go into butcher shops. So it's that kind of dispassionate thing that goes on. And I don't think you can really equate that to the man in the street with his dog or his cat.
No, but if you ask the man in the street how they feel about animals, they'll say they're animal lovers and they really care about animals.
But I could say the same thing. I mean, I have my own animals, and I certainly do, but I have this dispassionate approach to animals that are slaughtered for food. The other areas, I suppose, that concern me are these exotic things they're bringing in, such as ostrich and alligator and whatever else. These things that are coming in from other parts of the world and now finding their ways onto menus.
It probably comes in frozen, I imagine, doesn't it? But you're right. There's no. I mean, the further away meat has come from, I suppose, the harder it is to know its provenance is the word, isn't it? Provenance.
Well, yeah, and also how old it is. I don't know if there's a requirement in terms of how that meat should be marketed and how the safety considerations are put onto the packaging. I've got no idea.
No, nor have I, and yet we don't really care. And this is the thing I find so strange, whether it's cognitive dissonance or just sort of low-level hypocrisy or whether it's a willful blindness. I don't know, but I suspect, and I don't know enough about the issue, Jim, to say this with certainty, I suspect things were better in the 70s than they are now on this front, because the relationship between consumer and food appears to have become a lot more detached than it was back then. I could name the butcher that my mum bought meat from, and he would name the farm that he got it from, whereas now, as you say, it's come out the bottom of a freezer cabinet. It could have been brought in from New Zealand, and it could be 3 years old.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, of course, that was pretty much the case, wasn't it, before the EU, when they were bringing in lamb from New Zealand and places like that. They've actually had to be frozen or carried in refrigerated chips to reach the market here.
Oh, bon appetit. Jim, thank you. You're not still in that line of work, clearly.
Oh, no, not anymore, no. It was only a 6-month placement.
But you had a look, and they say I think Paul McCartney said if they put windows in every slaughterhouse, then we'd be a nation of vegetarians by tea time. There's probably some truth in that. So what is it that we're actually doing here? Is it I just struggle to remember precisely what cognitive dissonance means. India's not impressed. She says, I'm a 15-year-old vegan and I find it sad that adults twice my age, try 3 times your age, India, can't control themselves and not eat meat. It's not a question of self-control. I could give up meat if I wanted to, India, and to my shame, I just don't want to, even when I'm reading stories like this. It's quite remarkable. It's like sort of hypocrisy writ large, and yet, as Jim just attested, it's very, very hard to unravel. You've got 15 minutes after the looming travel news to have your say. There are 2 phone lines free, so if you think we're missing something huge, you know what to do. 0345 606 0973. I've got to say also, when we're in the business of reviewing opinions today, I've been deeply, deeply unimpressed by your deep fat fryer recipes. I think I might have to side with Mary Berry on this one. If all we've got is deep fried battered Ferrero Rocher and my recipe for courgette flowers, which you can do almost as well in a shallow frying pan, then maybe we do need to bid farewell to the deep fat fryer of your chips will never taste quite the same. It's fair to say, I think, that we've all emerged as a bunch of hypocrites. If you eat meat and you turn away, as we often do, from stories like the one in the news today involving cruelty in abattoirs, 4,000 cases of cruelty in 2 years, never change your habits at all. And I won't either. I'm not one of those people who uses a feigned concern for animal welfare as a weapon with which to beat Muslims over the head, because I'm not Islamophobic, and I'm not living in fear and hatred at the behest of politicians and journalists. I'm living with open eyes and open mind. So I know that when the halal debate comes round, as it often does, it's got absolutely nothing to do with animal welfare and everything to do with opportunities to be hateful. So when you're really hands up honest, none of us really, except vegetarians, can claim to be animal lovers. And this is quite a troubling conclusion, although it's not going to change my choice of dinner, I don't think. I promised my eldest we'd have shepherd's pie tonight. It's one of her favourites, and the school holidays are coming to the end. So what I do the leek crust on half of it, because the kids won't eat the leek crust. So I do the leek crust on half of it, and then just the mashed potato top on the other half. Pound shop Jamie Oliver. Alisa is in Boreham Wood. Alisa, what would you like to say?
Hi, I'm a first-time caller.
You're very welcome.
Basically, I turned it on. It's very close to my heart because I'm just moving towards vegetarianism.
Good, well done.
And I say moving towards because I think there's something quite important in that people think that it's all or nothing. And
yes.
I don't think it has to be all or nothing. So in the last few months, I was sort of gradually eating less meat. And then I kind of, the more I thought about it, the more I was kind of uncomfortable with it, which I have been for years. And for years, I was kind of, I'm just not going to think about it like most people. And I'm just going to kind of block it out.
That's what we do. It's what we all do, isn't it? We're all blocking it out. Oh, dear.
We're all blocking it out. And then basically, that for me, I think there's quite often like an emotional connection, which is why when you talk about kids, it's, you know, like you said, like it's very simple. They just go, I love animals.
I don't want to eat any.
For me, we went to stay on a farm, went to Suffolk for a week, and there were chickens and goats running around.
Was it a feather down farm?
It was just this little small farm. But
was it glamping? Were you staying in one of those cabins?
No, it was a B&B.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
It wasn't a proper farm. It was like a little small
boutique,
farm.
a boutique farm.
Yeah. Not middle class or anything.
Must give you my courgette flowers recipe before you go. Carry on. So there you were on your little boutique farm, not being middle class or anything.
But the animals have personalities, and I'm from London, and I don't come across animals very often, and I was with these animals for a week, and I came back and I just thought, you know, there were chickens and hens, you know, they were running around, they were just funny, and
farms exist to turn those animals into food, so it's an odd place to have a sort of Damascene conversion.
Yes, but this was a kind of. I mean, they call it a farm, but it was like, you know, yes, it was a sort of petting farm. She was like, they're like her family, these animals. But the point was, I formed a connection, and when I came back, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep eating this meat. But I'm not going to be hard and fast about it because I know that doesn't work for me. So if I'm craving a steak, I'll have a steak. But because I allow myself to have it, I'm having it less and less and less. But I know the option's there. And I think people sort of say, oh, I'm a vegetarian. I don't ever eat meat. I think it's disgusting. Well, I like meat. But the less I have, the better.
The better for you and the better for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're just like a sort of incremental move towards eating a lot less meat, but never in a way that... You see, that's it, isn't it? Sometimes almost sounds religious, the fervour of vegetarianism, and you're actively rejecting that path and choosing one of moderateness.
Exactly,
moderation.
And if people ask me, that's what I say. I say, you know, I'm moving towards vegetarianism, and that doesn't sound so sort of difficult for people to kind of digest, you know.
And you can now look yourself in the eye and say, I do care about animals. I am compassionate about animals. I'm not going to.
And also, it's so easy to cook vegetarian food. There are so, you know, we're in the days of the internet. There are so many recipes out there. Amazing recipes, really easy recipes. It's actually quite cheap. So things like, you know, chickpeas and all that stuff has really high protein.
And again, I hate it when the planets align too often, because it makes me wonder whether we're turning into the enemy and just sort of seeing what we want to see. But if you were making money out of the way things are at the moment, you would hate people saying what you can grow your own food.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? And there's the whole thing with sort of lobbyists and you know, the
sugar
power
tax,
of big business, and I do think, you know, it makes it difficult to, and it's everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, there is sort of meat and fast food and all this stuff kind of thrown at you. So it's very difficult, especially in the kind of fast-paced world we live in, to avoid it.
And when you try to avoid it, you often get lampooned for being all the things you're so careful to avoid, for being sort of holier than thou or righteous, sententious. It's happened again. There's been a theme through the last 2 hours. I don't think the first hour would have fallen very far into this category, but there is a sort of, here you go, Wayne's nailed it, only because he got on earlier. He says, your show today has been emotionalism versus logic all the way through. That's supposed to be a compliment. Grace is in Ruislip. Grace, what would you like to say?
Hi, I'm a first-time caller. I'm only actually 19, but I went...
You say that, Grace. You say that as if you think 19-year-olds don't routinely listen to this programme or this radio station.
I do. I'm guilty.
Well, I'll have you know, my demographics at the moment, I have more 19 to 34-year-olds than any other show in town. So you're in good company, Grace. Thank you.
Okay, good. I actually went vegan in October. At uni, for personal reasons as well, health reasons, and obviously the things that I'd seen about how animals are treated in abattoirs. I think the problem that we have in today's society is that we have a disconnection with the animals that tend to be killed on slaughterhouse, in slaughterhouse farms and in abattoirs. So we're quite happy, obviously, to have dogs and cats as pets, but because we don't associate cows and pigs and chickens as being pets, we don't have that love of them that we have for cats and dogs. So if you look, for example, in China with the Yulin Festival, where they slaughter dogs, and we petition against that, and as a country, we have an outcry about that. But if we treated cats and dogs in this country in the same way that pigs and stuff were treated in abattoirs, then we'd have the RSPCA on our backs, we'd be fined, we'd be imprisoned. But we're quite happy to kind of ignore it because it goes on behind closed doors, and it's not us directly that is killing these animals. I recently was helping out at Guides, and the kids were eating bacon sandwiches, and when they asked what bacon was, I said it's pig, and they were absolutely outraged by it. They had no idea that it was pig. And I think this is the thing, is we don't bring our kids up saying, well, this is what you see on a farm. And I think as well, when you call bacon, you're not referring to it as a pig. You're not calling pork a pig. You're not calling beef a cow.
But my kids, I mean, we had chickens in the back garden. My kids are pretty well versed in all of the things that you describe. I don't think I was necessarily growing up, but they know the score and they choose. But that's the point. They're making an informed choice, and they probably listen to their mum when I switch off a bit when she's explaining to them about the provenance of labelling and animals and how we know that the stuff we eat comes from a good place and that doesn't necessarily come from a good place. It doesn't have to lead you towards veganism, but if you're built a certain way, it inevitably will, won't it? It's hard to see how it can't.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a vet, so maybe that comes from, kind of stems from that, in that...
Yeah, but if you're a vet, then you'd have to do work experience in an abattoir.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, I'm not going to be a vet anymore. That's really, when I was younger, I chose not to, because I just thought I haven't got the heart to put animals down. But that's the kind of thing I think if I couldn't kill an animal with my bare hands, then why should I pay someone else to do it, sort of thing. If I feel I couldn't do it, then I don't...
It's always a very hard one to resist, and I would ordinarily have some pithy little comeback there, Grace, to say to you, well, you can't do this with your bear. You can't fly a plane, but you still go on holiday. But I don't know that I've got the stomach for these pithy put-downs today. I quite like that one, though. You can't fly. Actually, I will use that one. Bring Grace back. Grace? Great. Yeah, well, you can't fly a jumbo jet, can you? But you still go on holiday.
I know, but there's no moral compass needed there. You're not doing anything wrong, really, are you? You're not killing someone or taking life.
Carbon footprint? No, all right, you got me. It's been a very odd show today. I have a sense I've been wrong about almost everything. Andy's in Modbury. It's the first time for everything, I suppose. Andy's in Modbury. Andy, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing? All right?
No, I'm having a terrible time, Andy. I'm getting everything. I'm getting kicked from pillar to post. I just got owned by a 19-year-old. Go on.
I'm I'm in my early 40s now, and been vegetarian for most of my life. And the point I wanted to get across was I like meat. I used to eat meat all the time, meat, fish. There was never a meal that didn't have meat in it. But for me, the sort of subject goes so much deeper than that. And to me, it's about life. And I just think life's really, really precious. And that's the reason why I stopped eating meat. And
that's a common reason. And if I was in the business of pithy put-downs, which of course I'm not, I would ask how much trouble you go to avoid treading on insects, because they've got life too.
Well, I just think as long as you're not doing anything intentionally, then I think you almost get away with it. But
And what if you've got a wasp nearby? Wouldn't you swat a wasp? What if you've got a whopping great cockroach crawling across your kitchen floor? What are you going to do with it?
Well, it goes in a glass and goes out in the garden, doesn't it? Or it goes in my hands. I'm not scared of things like that. But,
I don't say you're scared of them. You just don't want them in your kitchen. All right. If there's something that you'd kill. What's the last thing you killed, Andy?
I haven't killed anything as far as I'm aware.
You must have done, Andy.
Sorry?
You must have killed something, Andy.
Not intentionally.
What's the last thing you killed unintentionally?
Probably a rabbit about 15 years when it was run out in front of my car, which I still have sleepless nights about, mate, you know?
Let it go, mate.
I will.
Hop on.
Very good. Well done, you.
Have a great day. Thank you. We'll speak soon. Apologies to everyone waiting to contribute to that conversation. I don't know that we've arrived at any conclusion. Sometimes I catch myself doing a sort of Jerry Springer's final thought style end to the show, but I can't today. I've got no idea whether we're coming or going, and I'm still having meat for dinner because I'm a bad person.